Sounds like there's probably a French horn in there.
So not so much of a French horn as a horny French.
There you go.
Pretty much. Far too horny.
Was the music? All
the time. Welcome to Quackcast number 347. This is Quackcast. This is the Quackcast, the Drunk Duck Quackcast, and we're going to talk about Psychopomps and Death Personified. Because Kawaii Gakuse did this post about that, and it's really fun. There's a lot of stuff to read out, so that's what we're going to do in our best crazy voices. And with me on this Quackcast is Baines the Fartsmith. Hello, Baines.
I just want to walk around the graveyard.
And of course, that laughter you hear is Pitface the Magnificent. Burpsmith.
Say the fucking costume, it's a way of life.
They're quoting things I have no idea about.
We'll try to keep it alive, the whole Quackcast quotes from that movie.
Maybe if we say enough things that we don't know what we're talking about, but like make them seem like legit references, it'll make us sound smart.
I like it.
Like quotes.
Don't you know what movie that's from? Jesus, dude.
It's not Shakespeare, guys. I hate to break it to you.
It's pretty close. It's better.
All right, let's begin with the Psychopomps and Death. So this is a news post Quite did about asking people about their favorite personifications of death in media, in comics, in movies, in cartoons, in anything. And people came up with some interesting ones. So it was all for Halloween, which has just ended now, but it's Halloween's eternal for you guys, isn't it? So
yes,
we should
it makes
always
the
do
pain go away.
But before we get into that, we have to mention the featured comic, and the featured comic for this week was the feature that I did. And, it's My Life as an American Hero. My Life as an American Hero. Take it away, Ozone Ocean. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and I am bringing you the feature for the week. And the feature for the week was My Life as an American Hero by Agent NY003. My Life as an American Hero is a tale of revenge, sisterhood, national security, and superpowers. Not superpowers in terms of America and Russia and China, but superpowers in terms of the traditional kind that we find in comics. So Sylvia, Luna, and Rachel are sisters and rivals. But when tragedy strikes their parents, they know they'll have to set their rivalries aside and learn to team up and go after the bad guys. This is a manga-style comic with a manga-style story. It's really fun to see how much it sticks to all the tropes and style. It has a consistent, colourful artwork in a manga style with it's 100% digital. The story is a revenge action-adventure tale with plenty of fights and drama. There's at least 330 pages there, so there's quite a lot to get along with. You find yourself devouring the pages in no time. So yes, you have quite an archive to read through if you want to get into this particular comic. And I advise you should, because it's rather entertaining and it's a pretty easy read. It's pretty easy and fun. It's because there's so many pages, it's been going for quite a while, and the artwork does go through a lot of improvement as you go along. It starts off as if the artist, Agent NY, is just learning the style, and it gets better as it goes along, which is always good to see in a comic that has such a huge archive of pages. You can see that development and progression as it goes through. So anyway, I hope you enjoy My Life as an American Hero. Read it. And that was My Life as an American Hero. But I'm back again, back from being a hero, and very successful. No, the American Hero by Agent NY 003, I think he's called. Okay, so next up we have our featured music that Gumwallace gave us this week, which was the music to The Constellation Chronicle, which is an interesting looking comic about space. Final Frontier. It's pretty groovy. But I want to tell you about the music that Gumwallace has given us. In the cold blackness of space, suddenly a twinkle appears. Bright light shoots out. Supercharged particles race on their path into the void at the speed of light, traveling through glowing spidery filaments as thick as a sun that make up the frozen explosion of a giant nebula, bending their course towards the radioactive chaos of an event horizon to take a deep dive into eternity towards the mysterious singularity within. That's how I describe this music. So take it away. Come on. And that was the musical theme by Gumwallace to The Constellation Chronicle. Okay, alright, next up we're going to talk about Psychopomps, which I've always thought is a weird name. I mean, isn't there a better name for a death personified than Psychopomp? It sounds so bizarre.
It sounds something cheerful about it.
Yeah.
About that phrase.
Yeah. Psychopomp.
I expected him to be in some like neon lit Akira-esque motorcycle gang from Tokyo or something.
The Psychopomps. Yeah, they're like the Warriors, except they're just like really weird gang from the Warriors who are wearing neon and
pumps, pom-poms.
Yeah, I think of pom-poms. I think of like cheerleaders. That's what it makes me think of.
The Psychopomps, here they come.
Yeah. Give me a T, give me an E, give me an A, give me a T.
The cheerleaders of death. Well, that would be a fantastic Psychopomp if death came out in that form. So what has Kwai said? Well, in this particular news post, she asked people to originally come up with their favourite incarnations of death, and we all did. And we're just going to talk about all people's favourite incarnations of death. So first up was mine, because, you know, I'm fantastic. But that goes without saying. And my favourite Psychopomp was the Doulahan from Durara, which is a ridiculous title of a comic. I mean, an anime it is. It's called Durara. Just how do you pronounce that? Like that, I suppose. Anyway, the Doulahan in this particular comic, it's a clever version of a type of character. Traditionally, they're horsemen or coachmen, all in black, with a black horse, and they carry their own head under their arm. And, if you see them, you're going to die, and they might throw their head at you or something. I don't know. Whatever. I'd never heard of it before I saw that cartoon. Anyway, the Durara version in this particular thing, the Dullahan version in Durara is a Dullahan for the present day. So she rides a motorbike instead of a horse. So her horse forms itself into a motorbike. And in order not to freak people out about her missing head, she forms her substance into the form of a helmet, a motorcycle helmet that she wears, where her missing head should be. So she can sort of blend into the everyday world. And so it looks really cool. So she's a groovy psychopomp. So that was mine. Cute and cool. So what about
Is Durara a manga?
It probably is, but I only know it as an animation.
Durara.
Exactly. That's what those cheerleader psychopomps are talking about. Durara.
Ra. Yeah.
You should watch it. It's cool. Do you want me to tell you about the anime?
Is it about the death character? Is that the main character?
No, well, it doesn't have one main character. It has about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 main characters. And, remember Pulp Fiction?
Yeah.
Everyone does. Which sort of began with a lot of interweaving stories. And we sort of picked them up in various stages, like in the beginning, the middle, or whatever. And it didn't matter. It was all sort of randomized. And we'd follow one lead character and how their story mixes in with another lead character, down the track. And
okay, yeah.
Durara is exactly like that. Exactly the same as that kind of thing. We follow characters and then their stories blend in, and then we go back, like 2 hours before and see how, something influenced something else. So it's pretty fun.
Right. That's cool. Yeah.
So, Baines, or do you guys, before we go into that, do you have any other... Baines, you've got a whole post here about it.
I've got a whole post, so I'll hold off, man.
Okay. All right. You may as well read it out. In a funny voice or your own voice?
Well, let's go in order so we don't get all confused. Because I don't remember what I said. And I don't feel like scrolling.
All right. Go ahead.
And I'm trying to think of another quote from that movie, but nothing's coming. Damn.
You run out of steam, man.
Death. Yeah. You ever seen that movie, Night of the Living Dead? There's one. Okay, Bravo says...
Oh, was that Bravo? I thought it was Baines, sorry.
That was me, but now we'll see what Bravo said. Bravio.
Bravio.
There were at least 2 other Twilight Zone episodes with death personified. One as an emotionless bureaucrat, one for the angels, and another as a wounded cop, played by Robert Redford. Nothing in the Dark. As someone who's studied NDE, near-death experience, and come damn close to getting killed, death will have a friendly, welcoming face, because it is not something to fear. It'll come for you in its own time, and no one ever gets away. For a good film about the person not knowing they should be dead, see the great low-budget horror movie Carnival of Souls. Is that a movie about that? I thought it was like an Island Dr. Moreau or some kind of crazy stuff like that. Anyway, I'm kind of fond of that ancient 1934 film, Death Takes a Holiday, because it pulled together a lot of the tropes we all know today. I abandoned the Bravo voice. I don't know why. I might be drinking. Can't do it. Frederick March would make a great Death, just as he did DR, or just as he did Dr. Jekyll, and a million other roles in his long career. There was a comic story in the old DC Weird War anthology called The Face of Death, where a Civil War sketch artist is trying to capture the face of battle. He keeps getting closer and closer into the action until he gets shot and sketches the face of death, which is blank and ends with that ambiguity. Is it blank because you can't see it if you still live? Blank because in the end the face of death is your own? Still, it was a good story with some of that detailed, superb art DC War comics were known for 40 years ago. And then there's always Emma A.I., the Jingoku Shuju. Want to try dying just this once? The Seventh Seal. Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. There's a Mr. Grimm at the door, and he's here about some reaping. Oh, that was hilarious. I remember that. He's here about some reaping.
It was, yeah. And he says, "Shut up, you American know-it-all." Oh, I want to tell you
I
this,
loved
and I'll
Seventh Seal, by the way. That's a great old kind of classic interpretation of death, like a little bit more of a intellectual interpretation, but it's one of my favorite movies. I highly recommend it for anybody.
I haven't seen it, but I have seen Bill and Ted.
Same thing.
I was going to bring that one up, God damn it! Or did he already just? I was reading something. I was reading a comic. I'm sorry. I did. Did he mention that already?
No.
No.
But the death in Bill and Ted is based on the Seventh Seal death, I believe.
Oh yeah.
The pale dude with the robe.
But I have seen that. I think it's the bogus, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's the sequel.
Bogus Journey.
Yeah. Bogus Journey, yeah.
You might be a king or little street sweeper, but sooner or later you dance with the
Reaper.
And he spins the scythe.
And he plays. Yeah, he's playing.
Get down with your bad self.
He's playing bass on his side.
Yes. And that is my only intro to the death from the Seventh Seal. The spoof version.
That's all you need. You're fine. Oh, it's pretty good.
So, do you want to take over, Amelia P?
Amelia P says, I'm not reading a supernatural. I'm not reading a supernatural title at this moment in DD, so I can't name it. But when someone talks about death personification in comics, it reminds me of Death from Sandman.
Oh, yeah. That's a funky thing. Can you guys tell us about that? Because I've never read it.
I've never read it either.
It's a little girl.
It's in my post. Post.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Don't worry, everybody. Baines is here. He'll educate you.
Yeah, Baines will ride to the day and save us. Okay.
Educate me hard.
So Easy B has come along. Easy B has buzzed into the environment and says, crossover kill centers on death avatars from multiple universes, including Steve. And then he's got a link to crossover kill. I've always been a fan of the death from Neil Gaiman's Sandman series. Oh,
another mention.
So there we are, popular. But none of them describe it.
That come up fairly quickly, though. Yeah. I don't think they've read it either. I think they're just like, they know it's going to be trendy. So they're like, I'm going to say it first.
They're all being clever. All right, Kim Luster. Baines, I'm sorry.
All right. I looked through a graphic novel a while back about Marvel's Thanos, an almost omnipotent dude who's in love with the personification of death and commits genocides as presents to her to show his love. Yeah, I know. Anyway, death appears to him as a small, innocent little girl, and it troubles him deeply. That stuff rocks. I haven't read those comics with Thanos, the omnipotent being, loving death, and sort of courting death. I don't know how that works. I think they're kind of going to be doing that in the movies in the next couple of years here. But that's cool. And I thought death was portrayed usually outside of Thanos' point of view, I guess, as just a skeleton in a robe and sort of a silent, unspeaking, kind of unknowable, powerful being. But then, yeah, that does sound neat.
Yeah, it's a little girl. But
the little girl thing I didn't realize.
His whole love connection.
That's right. Yeah, that's sort of
freak him out.
Odd. Yeah, maybe that was it. Yeah. Like, what? Yeah.
Damn it! All right, Cam, can you give us your best Cam? Pit Cam.
It's hard to top Steve from Life and Death as the best death. Although after
See, what's that? I lost my Schwarzenegger voice, man. Oh, that's so bad. I'm disheartened. I'm just gonna read it. It's hard to stop Steve from Life and Death. I know, it's like cutting Samson's hair, man. It's hard to top Steven from Life and Death as the best death. Although after borrowing him over and over again, I finally started developing my own Grim Reaper for the Kamix. That's their. It's KAM, and that's people are listening and they can't see. They think I'm just saying it weird. So that's how it's. That's how it's written.
Pit's reading your Kamix. Are you drawing your Kamix today, Pit?
I don't think Hella beats Steve, but she's fun in her own wacko way. Years ago, Al Schroeder of Mid-Mistress started a thread for a list of webcomic death and Grim Reapers at a crossover and Cameo archive forum. The link displayed.
Oh, cool.
A hitchhiker was originally on a radio show called Suspense. Years ago, I was in a dinner theater production where I played the driver.
That so he's referring to, didn't Bravo bring that up with the hitchhiker?
Oh, okay.
The hitchhiker, yeah.
The hitchhiker. Scary. Okay, well, we got Baines next. Oh, I'm going to read yours, Baines. My best Baines.
All right. And if you want me to explain more about Death and Sandman, I will at this point after you read.
I love it. Okay, I'll show you. There's an American. How do Americans sound? I just don't know. There's no Americans here that I can copy. That's a shame.
That's right. Pitt's a Brit. Pitt's a Brit. I'm Canadian.
It's a Brit.
The cheerful. God, why can't I do an American accent anymore? It's terrible. Why?
Just gotta be boring.
I do an American accent anymore.
Cheerful.
Don't. Damn it! I can't do any. I'll just do a. Okay, I can do it. The cheerful goth version of Death in the Sandman comic was neat. A dude named Zane kills Death and then takes over his position. In that world, the incarnations of immortality novels, Death is an office that a person could hold. The show, Supernatural, has a complicated system of reapers that usher the souls to the afterlife, and the now omnipotent cosmic being called Death, who's vaguely in charge, older than time, and enjoys the Chicago deep dish pizza. So there we have it.
Oh, who doesn't?
Yeah, Supernatural had a neat sort of system where all these like old men were reapers. Usually they were old men, and they would stand around at the scene of like where a lot of death was going to happen. You'd see all these creepy old dudes. Not everybody could see them. A few people could, standing around, and sometimes reaping individual souls who were destined to die. And then this dude, who was actually Death, who's just a incomprehensible level of power, I guess, obviously.
Okay.
The goth Death in Sandman. Sandman is awesome. You guys, I'm sure you would both love it. It's amazing. Highly recommend. Everybody knows that. It's one of the best comic series ever. And it centers on the anthropomorphic representations of all these concepts. So they're called the Endless, and they're kind of brothers and sisters. This quote-unquote family. And the main character in the series is the Sandman, who's the personification of dream. His sister is he's sort of a tall, goth-looking character, like white skin and all that kind of stuff. You've probably seen the images. His sister is Death, and she's like a goth character, like sort of teenaged age, maybe.
Okay.
And very friendly, very bubbly, and she once every 100 years she lives one day as a human being, so she can experience living and then dying. Amazing character, sort of all powerful, but sort of has this really sort of fun personality. Very cool to have Death personified in that kind of opposite kind of personality thing. She's kind of inscrutable, but very, very cool. Whereas Dream is sort of an emo, sort of misery. He really is. Like, he's sort of like this emo dude, and he's like sort of stuck on these old relationships and sort of like very moody and all that kind of stuff. Very solemn. Yeah, she's kind of the opposite of that. So definitely, man, if you haven't read Sandman, definitely you will not regret it.
Okay, he's got Baines as 5 stars of approval.
Yes, that's not a very controversial stance. Yeah, it's a well-loved series and all.
Newsflash: Baines thinks a fantastic comic is fantastic.
Yes, nobody cares. Yeah.
It's breaking now.
Yes. I also claim that you can quench your thirst with water.
Jesus, really?
Yes, well, try it.
You heard it first, guys.
You heard it first.
All right. Well, okay. Used books. Pitsy, give us your used books.
Is it my turn again?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did I?
No chance.
That's clicking off again. Yeah. We have a Tudge. I am Tudge. So, I love Twilight Zone. I remember all of those episodes and a couple other Afterlife episodes without a death character. I really enjoy the calming, optimistic take on the afterlife. The episode with the man refusing to enter heaven without his hunting dog was lovely. Maybe a touch too sappy.
Oh.
There is an episode of the newer Outer Limits where a man has been dodging death by medical procedures and it is trying to claim him. It presents itself through electrical disturbances, never appears personified, but is an intelligent force. The best death is the death of Discworld. He is mostly detected but has amusing quips and insights into mortality. And at least 3 books where he's a main protagonist.
Yeah, I quite like the death from Discworld. Sometimes he gets like a bit overpowered and a bit overdone because Pratchett loved having his death character all the time, and sometimes it can feel a bit like a cheat to have a character who's commenting on mortality from an outside perspective. But he's a lot of fun. Because he's overpowered. So, you like your Goku kind of character who's overpowered, or you like your character who's outside of things. So yeah, you can love him or hate him, but he's quite amusing, as most of Pratchett's characters are, and he has a lot of interesting special powers. And sometimes we get taken into Death's world, so we learn a bit more about him and his, how he lives his life and what he thinks and how he thinks about life and death and how he's decided to organize himself, because Discworld is a weird world. It's like where all myth and fantasy has all come real for whatever reason in this bizarre world, and this particular death decided to sort of set himself up in this particular way. So he has a big mansion, he has all these hourglasses that have, people's times in the sand. So when the sand runs out, that's when their life ends. And they can be turned over too, to give them extra time and stuff like that. And that's how he's decided to run this universe. And he, looks at
that reminds me of There was an episode of I don't know if you guys ever watched the show The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, which has another interesting portrayal of death in that, where the 2 kids they trick Death into kind of being their servant. They play a game against him or something like that for their souls, kind of like once again the premise of the Seventh Seal, because the knights playing the game against the but this time it's 2 kids, vying for their mortal souls, and I don't remember it very well. They win, and so every episode is about how just Death being their servant, and how indignified he's treated and stuff. They go on all these adventures. But one of the episodes, they're really fun. It was a really good show. It was one of my favorites when it was on. But one of the episodes, they go. I can't remember now. There was something about like they got to go and see where the hourglasses for the lives are kept. So of course they start mucking with all that, and then try to turn them over, and then trying to get at each other by, shaking them up and stuff, and turning back into infant, and then, going back in the time so far you don't exist anymore, and all this stuff. It was a fun episode.
Yeah, it's fun when you can play with the rules of the world with that way, because that's like the most fundamental rules, life and death. And when you can mess with that, wow. There's amazing stuff you could do. That's the very bones of your universe. It's really clever.
Yeah. Well, when I think about that show in that context that you were just talking about, that it is interesting further, because like Death himself in that show isn't all powerful. He is in a sense, but the rules of the universe still kind of apply to him. Yeah. And so he gets the short end of the stick as much as the kids do, or because of the kids and stuff like that. So it's like this vast power, but it's humbled so much in every episode that you feel sorry for him. Like
I like that too. In the Incarnations of Immortality, where in the first book it's Death. This guy kills Death and then takes over his job. That's how it works. A human will become immortal and take over the job, and it's really portrayed as like it's this massive amount of power that you get, but also this massive responsibility and all these rules, like sort of like you said, well said, the will of the universe. Kind of, you have to, keep on reaping on.
You got to do that thing, man. You got to do the thing, which reminds me of last week. I don't know if we were talking about it on air or afterwards, but remember we started talking about that show, Dead Like Me, where it's the people are turned into the Grim Reapers, and that had a really interesting premise as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's reaping becomes like a 9-to-5
like
job for these people, and they have to go home and pay the rent and live in a house. They're all the normal things, but they can't connect with their families anymore, so they're still alive almost. But
they've all died, and that's how they became the Reapers.
But they're alive as different people almost, because they're still like 9 to 5 kind of stuff.
Forgot about that.
They're in the world, but they look
like different people.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I saw this silly film with Kevin Bacon and who was in it? Kevin Bacon, some other big stars. The dude was in it. You know who that is, Baines?
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges. And who was the star?
Was that Footloose?
Footloose. Who's the star? I can't remember. Anyway, it's called R.I.P.D. Really clever.
Oh, right. Yeah, aren't they hunting aliens or something? I haven't seen it.
Funny you should say that. So it's like, everyone knows Men in Black. This is like the dead version of Men in Black. So instead of hunting aliens, they're hunting dead people. And when you're a policeman in life and you're like a dirty cop or whatever, and you die, you have a chance to join the RIPD, which are the death police who go around hunting ghosts who are staying alive and not, wanting to die properly.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So they're Grim Reapers for ghosts. And all these ghosts, they use special talismans or whatever to make themselves look alive. And the only way you can really tell that they're really dead is by giving them Indian food. Because something in it makes them just go crazy, and all the corruption sort of, seeps out, and they become incredibly fat and just huge and blobby and rotten and pustule and stuff like that, and just insane. Like, it's a really silly movie, but it is like Men in Black, because these guys are sort of going around as like a buddy cop kind of film, having to go around and hunt these ghosts down and save the world from the terrible thing that's going to happen. It's a fun movie, but if you've seen Men in Black, you've seen this. So I don't know if I would recommend it. If you want to see Jeff Bridges and Kevin Bacon and whoever was the star that I can't even bloody remember. Some handsome dude who's forgettable. I don't know. But yeah, it's not a bad film. Just generic. Very generic. Oh yeah, but one interesting thing was it's always more interesting when you have like arbitrary rules about how the world works. And in this particular one, when you join the RAPD, you have to serve for 100 years. And the interesting thing was Jeff Bridges' character was like an old-timey sheriff from the Old West. And you think, well, hang on, 100 years, that's only like, 1910 and 1915 or whatever.
Yeah.
When the film was made. But it turns out that he's got himself suspended all the time, If you do this one more time, I'm going to take your badge, that kind of thing. Make the chief angry.
So he gets his tour extended or something?
Exactly. So he comes from the 1850s or whatever. He keeps on complaining about how coyotes stole his bones and made love to his skull.
I heard that movie wasn't very good, but I mean, it sounds cool. What you're describing.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just generic. That's all. It's just.
Oh, okay.
It's not. It doesn't knock your socks off. It's a fun, simple film. Yeah. So if you want to get into it, go for it. You just maybe you'll have better luck than me remembering who the actual star was. I'll have to look that up now. I'll have to. But yeah, Dead Like Me, that was a really, really, really fun series. I'm going to have to watch the rest of that. Okay. R.I.P.D. Gotta know who the star was. I'm just going crazy.
We should read the last post from Corruption.
Oh, yeah. Ryan Reynolds is the star. Yes, the most generic actor on the face of the earth. He has... His head is just one blank sphere to me. It could be anyone's face. I don't care. Expressionless guy.
Fuck that guy.
Okay, so Corruption. Corruption says... Oh, Corruption. That's such a fantastic name, isn't it? Corruption.
Yeah.
There's a good Exodus song called Corruption. It gets stuck in my head now.
Death, and Psychopomps are presented in many ways, even within just one faith. You can have different people doing the same job. In Greek mythos, Charon was one, as was Hermes, Thanatos, Macarena, Marcia, and more. Then again, the Greeks did a good job of absorbing other pantheons into their own and assimilating their gods into the Greek ones. Death can appear in many forms. I like the TV series Dead Like Me. Oh, there we are. Where all the main cast are dead spirits acting as psychopomps for other souls who are not in the balance. And speaking of dead people, Tance, the ghost of Tance, has appeared before us onto the podcast.
Yes. Hello, I'm here to haunt you.
Hello, Tance, and apparently Tance's pants today are jeans.
However could you guess that? You must be psychic.
I know, right? It's just, I'm always thinking about pants. That's the thing.
That's also a fact.
So, this particular Quackcast is about psychopomps and death and stuff like that, Tans. Do you have a favorite psychopomp?
What is a psychopomp?
Ha! Oh my goodness, we can educate.
Oh my God,
the
I don't
Tans.
know.
Okay,
Please enlighten.
I didn't even know what a psychopomp was until somebody wrote it somewhere. And I had to read it. So a psychopomp is just an incarnation of death. It's like a human death in a human form, or death, in a tangible kind of form. Basically, that is a psychopomp.
Okay. Well, I do have a favorite lately, and it's a Korean legend because I've been on an Asian binge the past few years. It is a Korean legend about what translates, I think, as goblin or whatever, because of course we have to trust the translators. And it's about this entity that used to be a mortal, but the death that this mortal suffered was so distressing to the soul, like a super unfair, super betrayal, extremely unjust. You get the idea. To the point that the soul gathers so much rage and need for revenge and need for closure that the person resurrects him or herself with the permission of God, as that concept exists in the Korean pantheon. And then this person becomes basically a death spirit, and whoever is unjust and whoever is within this context of his or her anger, he rips. So I like that.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's a very complicated kind of revenge focused.
Yeah. 1 second, I have to pay attention to my cat. I'll be right back. Or he will yawn.
A white cat.
That sounded like a little kid.
I know. Perhaps it's an incarnation of death. Well, cats are the incarnation of death for rats, pretty much.
Right.
Yes.
Cats are the psychopomp for rats. That's just a fact, at least in my house. That got me thinking, actually, the whole Korean thing, because there's this not excellent, there's this much loved ongoing anime called, I think it's Hell Girl. And it's one of those, to me, it's one of those silly things where, like the Twilight Zone, when someone just does something a little bit bad, they have this disproportionate punishment. Oh, you were mean to someone once, or you did something bad. It means you're gonna die for that. It results in your death for being slightly dickish to someone once. It's the ultimate punishment.
That is also a Korean thing. Like how big the punishment is, it's anyone's guess. Could be 1,000 years in hell for calling someone stupid, and
exactly.
Let's give a slap on the wrist on the killer that killed like a gazillion other people because his mother used to beat him when he was young or something.
Yeah, it's that nutty stuff that's in Korean and Japanese culture about revenge and stuff. It's if you're contrite enough, then you can get away with anything pretty much. But yeah, Hell Girl is very much like that, and the whole thing's based around this idea of this exactly as you were saying, pretty much, I think, Tance. Well, not exactly, but related anyway, because this girl dies when she's quite young, in the 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And it was some kind of awful death, and her spirit sort of comes back as a vengeful spirit, and she becomes this hell girl, and she's in charge of going around and reaping various souls. But she doesn't just reap any souls. They have to have someone actually had to contact her about it. So it's just,
I think you're thinking of a Grim Reaper, Korean Grim Reaper. Those are an entire different class of spirits.
Oh, really?
That they used to be either people that committed suicide, and now they are forced as penance to keep reaping the souls of people on demand. Like they are basically on the wrong bureaucratic end of heaven, and they are issued lists every day of people that they have to go and pick up, basically from it.
Yeah.
Forever. Yeah. And there are also reapers that were born as reapers. They were never human.
Yeah.
And those are the bosses. And they are more powerful, and they usually are rude to the minions.
The minion reapers. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that Japan and Korea had such a complex death mythology. That's crazy.
Oh yeah. They I mean, most of their religion circles around death. I mean, they worship their dead
Their
relatives.
ancestors, yeah.
Yes, they also believe, they believe in reincarnation, so the death that you have is very important on how you will transcend to the next life and whether you will manage.
Yeah.
So and how and also it depends to a point to those you leave behind. They have to also let you go, which is another process. I mean, everything is around death and dying and how to deal with it in Korean religion more than anything else.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, the version in Hellgirl, yeah, that was I found it a bit too repetitive personally, because she's always going out and always meting out punishments to people that are, ridiculous, and when people are mean, they're far too mean, it's all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that wasn't a good version of it, but I'd love to see a better version of that sort of thing. I did just think of another one.
There is a drama that is a very good representation. Yeah. Let me find it, because I'm terrible at remembering the names, the titles of the dramas that they make.
Oh, same with
although
me.
Goblin, and it also has a Grim Reaper. There are two main characters, the Goblin and the Grim Reaper, and all their weird history that they share, because of course they come from the same incident like that. There is another one that is ongoing about Reapers, Grim Reapers. So I'll try to find them both and paste it for you here. 1 second.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, the one series is just called Goblin. Okay.
I know there's a terrible movie called about goblins, I think. Isn't there? And this person's being eaten by them, and he's like, "Oh no, they're eating me alive."
You're thinking of Trolls.
Oh, Trolls. Yeah, that was a brilliant movie.
Oh yeah.
One of the best movies ever. When I originally saw it,
You're talking about they're eating him, and then they're gonna eat me.
I thought
God.
there was a porno.
Yeah. Oh. Maybe it was Troll 2. I never saw it.
It looks the actors are like porn actors pretty much. They really are.
Oh my god.
That's how it's done.
Okay, this is one.
Oh, you found your link. It's the Goblin. Oh, the Korean drama. So this isn't a goblin like in European mythology. This is
no, has nothing to do. It's he's like a god, like a lesser god. He has very godlike powers, extremely handsome. He has to find a bride eventually, and he needs the goblin's bride in order to complete his purpose and be able to transcend, because he's stuck. He cannot reincarnate because he's a goblin.
Yeah.
And that is a curse in their mythology. So he's not a happy camper, although he's like immortal and godlike and drop dead gorgeous and, you know, basically Superman, but emo Superman. Still, it's a very, very nicely given fairy tale, in my opinion, at least.
There he is wearing his beautiful tweed jacket.
Yeah. And this is the one. This one is ongoing. Of course, following it because death and fairy tales. It's called Black.
Your pussycat.
Yeah, he's waiting for his food. And I hope that he stops yelling like this.
Give
1
me,
second.
Give me. I want. I love cats. So this movie, this TV series has linked us to, it's called Black. And it's about a detective possessed by a grim reaper. Haram can see shadows of death. These two struggle to save the lives of people, breaking the rules of heaven. So they're sort of not really doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, basically the exact opposite. The Grim Reaper saves the lives that he's supposed to reap. But the nice thing about this character is that he is a self-serving bastard. He doesn't do it because he has this higher compassion for... sorry, but the cat, he will stop. It's as if I haven't fed him for a week. I assure you he is fed. Anyway, so he does it for a very self-serving reason, and he is actually a bastard, and he keeps being a bastard. At least until up to now. We'll see how that continues, but he's not a sympathetic character, which is very interesting, although he's the main character.
That's what you want in a main character, I think. You want some of them to be a bit like less sympathetic sometimes, just to spice it up. I was just thinking about personifications of death, and one thing that I really enjoyed was this anime called I can't remember what it's called. It's called Flim Decum or something like that. Something Decum, and it's about this like underground bar that people go into, and they just happen to find their way, and then they can't remember how they got there. There's always two people walk into this bar, and there's this weird setup. There's strange people sitting behind the bar, and strange people sitting on the seats and stuff like that. And if you look behind the bar, if you really look in the shadows, there's looks like a whole bunch of dead bodies sort of hanging up in the shadows by ropes. It's weird, though you can't really make it out. But what it turns out is that those bodies are actually mannequins on ropes, and they're all back there like marionettes, gigantic marionettes. And anyway, there's two people that walk into the bar. They don't know each other, and they sort of say, "Oh, how are you going?" And the bartender and the staff interest them in playing a game against each other. Whether it's darts or some kind of love game, whatever you normally have in a bar, those kind of games, like whether it's a quiz or something like that. And what happens is the game they're playing against each other is actually something related to what they did in life. And it's when they score points against each other, it sort of brings up sort of flashes and makes them remember, hang on, doesn't this relate? Oh, hang on, I do know this person I'm playing against. And then in the end, it turns out these two people are actually dead. And always two people dead. And they're playing against each other because it's to determine which of them gets into heaven and which goes to hell. And only one can ascend and one can go down. And the results are dependent on whoever wins the game. And it's normally, what always happens is the person who wins the game is more worthy, and the person who loses is less worthy, and the bar staff sort of judge that. And then in the end, they get ushered over to these elevators, and one goes in one elevator, one goes in one and the other elevator, and of course, one elevator goes up and one goes down. And it was a really interesting kind of take on the whole idea of judging and death deciding where you go. And and in this world, it's all done by bars and bartenders. And there's a whole bunch of these bartenders all over the place.
You get a drink before you go to hell.
Yeah, exactly, you do. Get a drink in a smelly bar. Get to talk to bartenders and strangers. Yeah, just the way you want to end. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what it's called. That's the problem, because I really loved it. It's something's Deckham. I can't remember the first part of the name. But yeah, the reason why there's mannequins is because it, when these people do these games and stuff like that, sometimes they injure each other and hurt each other. They end up doing that. But it then turns out that actually that wasn't their real bodies. They were just animating these mannequins for the time when they're in the bar, because they're already dead. And Deckham, the guy who's behind the bar, he actually keeps the mannequins of these people as a sentimental thing, and he adds them behind the bar. So that's what the mannequins are. They're the people who come in and get judged.
Wow.
He stores them behind the bar, yeah. So I'm spoiling the whole thing for you, but you probably never watch it. So.
No, that reminds me of a movie that's relatively similar, I think, with Meryl Streep. And I think it was called Defending Your Death, or Defending Yourself, or Defending Your Life, I think it was the title. And it took place like after death. All the souls go into this resort. And
cool.
where they can, eat everything they like as much as they like and not get fat, because of course they are not, they don't actually have a corporeal version of themselves. It's all just in their mind, and they get day by day called in a sort of PowerPoint presentation of their lives, where they have to defend the episodes of their lives and why they did what they did and how they did what they did and so on and so forth.
Oh man!
And the whole thing is that if they defend it well, then they can move on, which is we don't really know what it is. Probably reincarnation, maybe heaven. Yeah. Usually reincarnation, or they have to repeat and they get born in worse circumstances, or they go back to formula basically, and that's a very interesting concept, and how one of the souls gets their ticket forward by doing things after life, like when they are actually already dead and going through this judgment. And what makes the cut, because they seem like they're going to fail, is how they decide to react to a situation that is taking place at the resort, quote unquote. And that is their final judgment. It's actually after death, not before.
Ah, that sounds an interesting film. Do you remember what it was called?
That's neat.
Defending Your Life, I think.
Oh, Defending Your Life. Okay. Yeah, that's another one of those films with a good joke title. Defending Your Life. I'll add that.
That's wild, man. Like, imagine that. Like, you have to look at your entire life and sort of justify yourself.
I would fail that because I hate doing those things. I hate that. Actually, that reminds me. We're sort of almost out of time, but speaking about justifying yourself, the incarnation of death in Red Dwarf was this guy called the Inquisitor, and he was this 1,000-year-old android kind of character. He wore this kind of death mask over his face, and he had this gun that would erase you from history if he shot you, if you couldn't defend yourself. So you'd not only be dead, but no one would ever remember. You would never have existed. And so he goes around to all these people, and he can travel in time. So he goes and sees every person in existence in order to get them to justify themselves. And by the time he gets to the Red Dwarf crew, he goes to them, and the way he judges the people is he gets them to judge themselves, in that when he takes his mask off, it's their face that they're looking at. So they can't lie to themselves about themselves, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also in that movie a prerequisite. Like, even if you wanted to lie, you couldn't. Which made for some pretty... I haven't seen it in years, but I remember that the comedy was at least amusing. Around that.
It was also this is one of the better Red Dwarf episodes. The Red Dwarf went in ups and downs, and this was one of the good ones. Yeah, it was fun. I still remember how the cat justified himself. So he went to justify the cat and said, "Justify yourself," as he does. He takes his mask off, and the cat speaks to himself and says, "You're a shallow, narcissistic, self-loving, worthless creature." And the cat says, "Yeah, I'm self-loving, narcissistic, worthless, but I got a great ass." And then the judges him, says, "It's true, you have got a great ass. Justify." I love that. So yeah, that was that's one of my favorite personifications of death. But now we've sort of reached the 60-minute mark, so we don't have to keep blabbering on anymore.
We're out of time. It's all over.
Death.
No, our time's up.
It is. Yes. Death is about to take us. Will we ascend or will we plummet? You decide. I think we're going to plummet. I don't think there's any hope. Okay. This has been Quackcast number 347. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
My life as an American hero.